Australia is sending 2 military surveillance planes to help the Philippines in its fight against Islamist militants in the country's south. Philippine soldiers have been fighting insurgents linked to Islamic State who seized the city of Marawi late last month. Hundreds of people have died and there are growing fears the jihadist group could establish a wider foothold in the region. Anne Barker reports.
Philippines forces are intensifying their push to retake the city of Marawi and hope they can end the 5-week siege there as early as this weekend. Military authorities say there are now only about 100 armed militants confined to an area of about 1 square kilometre, a fraction of the 400 or 500 fighters who seized the city on May the 23rd. Nearly 400 people have been killed, most of them militants, and army officials say the remaining militants' firepower is flagging. But more than 1,000 civilians remain trapped in their homes and others have been used as human shields. A military commander, Christopher Tamos, says Philippine soldiers have succeeded in isolating the rebels and their priority now is to rescue hostages, trapped civilians and those caught in the crossfire.
That is the #1 consideration we have for operation right now, saving the civilians, saving the hostages. That's why very careful for this aerial bombing that we will not be hitting unless we have a clear visual of the enemies or the local terrorists.
Australia is now sending spy planes to boost surveillance of Islamist militants over southern Mindanao. 2 AP-3C Orion aircraft will provide support to the Philippines military and boost capacity already provided by the US. Australia's Defence Minister Marise Payne says the regional threat from IS and foreign fighters is a direct threat to Australian interests. And the director of the Institute for Policy Analysis of Conflict, Sydney Jones, says the situation in Marawi affects the broader region.
It's clear that what's happening in Marawi affects Indonesia and Malaysia. There are clearly fighters from Indonesia and Malaysia who are working with this coalition in Marawi, and there's always the chance that fighters now with new combat experience and with new legitimacy can come back to their own countries and conduct violence there.
Foreign ministers from the Philippines, Malaysia and Indonesia have met in Manila this week to tackle the rise of Islamist radicalism across the region. They're worried the siege in Marawi is just a prelude to further violence. Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi says regional cooperation is essential.
The threat that we are facing is imminent. No action is not an option. This is incumbent upon us to embark on taking concrete action. Therefore, cooperation among the three of us is a necessity.
All 3 nations have launched joint naval patrols to try to stop the movement of militants across the region. Malaysia is worried that military success in Marawi may only send those insurgents expelled from there to Malaysia's eastern state of Sabah. Its foreign minister is Anifa Aman.
In this regard, our 3 countries must participate in an effective system to identify and combat terrorism activities. And this means that our enforcement agencies must constantly engage with one another.
The 3 Southeast Asian nations have also agreed to cooperate more on intelligence sharing and military training.
Anne Barker reporting.